Is Trump's long, high-risk Iran gamble now nearly done, as his war chief hints that a major breakthrough on the nuclear file could finally be in sight? Is Pete Hegseth's big claim that a U.S. Iran deal may arrive soon a sign that Trump's nuclear agreement is just days away, or simply pressure on Tehran to sign before the window closes? After Trump warned Iran to choose between a deal and very harsh force, the Pentagon is now saying an agreement is coming soon, pairing public threats with a promise that diplomacy is still alive. Is Washington offering Iran its clearest diplomatic off-ramp yet, while keeping the war option firmly on the table as leverage if talks stall or Tehran hesitates? Framed starkly as nuclear deal or military strike, is the US now presenting Tehran with a final choice that could decide whether this fragile ceasefire turns into lasting calm or a new round of conflict? Amid fragile ceasefire talks across the region, Washington now claims an Iran nuclear deal is close, signaling that months of back-channel negotiations may be approaching a decisive moment. On June 7th, U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said a U.S.-Iran agreement may arrive soon, carefully raising expectations without putting an exact deadline on the talks. Hegseth stressed that Donald Trump remains committed to blocking Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons, calling that redline the core objective behind every draft and proposal on the table. At the same time, the Pentagon chief underlined that U.S. military forces remain ready if diplomacy fails, repeating that pressure and credible force will stay in place until an acceptable deal is signed. Hegseth also touched on security in the Strait of Hormuz during the current ceasefire, signaling that Washington is watching shipping lanes closely even as it talks to Tehran. He said commercial shipping is still moving through the strait despite regional tensions, arguing that U.S. posture and allied preparations are keeping vital trade routes open while diplomats work.
Of course it's a ceasefire. I mean, the president has said that. He's very clear. Things can happen intermittently during that, but right now, the president is committed to getting a great deal for the United States of America that ensures they never get a nuclear weapon. I watch him every day in that pursuit. He's dedicated to it, and we are prepared at the War Department, if that does not happen, to do what needs to be done to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. But we are negotiating actively. Things are happening. Shipping is moving through. Iran shouldn't be shooting at it, and when they do, we take care of that as you would expect. But ultimately, we think a great deal, is likely coming soon.
Hegseth's comments came shortly after Trump himself said a deal with Tehran is within striking distance, reinforcing the message that Washington sees this as a make-or-break phase for talks with Iran. On June 7th, Trump told NBC News that under such a deal the United States will help physically remove Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium, treating it as a central pillar of the agreement. The U.S. president said American and Iranian teams could jointly destroy that nuclear material, either inside Iran or somewhere else, if trust is restored and a pact is signed. He emphasized that U.S. equipment would be used to take out and eliminate the uranium, presenting Washington as the key guarantor that the stockpile truly disappears. But if talks fail, Trump warned the U.S. would strike Iran's military very harshly, making clear he sees a military option as the fallback if diplomacy does not deliver. He added that, in that scenario, American forces would remove the nuclear material without Iran's cooperation, suggesting a forced cleanup after a major operation. Trump also claimed that U.S. space-based surveillance can closely track activity at Iranian sites, boasting that American cameras can monitor movement around sensitive facilities almost in real time. Trump said, and I quote, "If we make a deal that now we're friendly, we'll all go together. It'll be our equipment. We'll take it out and destroy it, whether it's on site or whether we take it off site. And we will go with them, or without them. But we won't have people shooting at us, okay? Now, if we don't make a deal, then we're going to take them out militarily very harshly. And we'll wait till we do that before we go, in which case we'll have safety either way. You know, we have cameras on it, all over it. If anybody walked there, if you walked over there, I would be able to read your first name on your lapel." Unquote. Trump has claimed that Tehran is prepared to accept a formal ban on developing nuclear weapons, presenting this as a central concession already on the table. However, he now wants the pact to go further and explicitly ban Iran from buying or otherwise acquiring nuclear weapons from any outside source, closing what he sees as a loophole. The U.S. president has said this extra language remains one of the key negotiating issues, indicating that diplomats are still haggling over the exact wording. Trump has suggested Iran initially pushed back on these tougher terms but later softened its stance, a shift he casts as proof that his pressure campaign is working. He now argues that only a handful of issues separate both sides from a final agreement, painting the moment as a narrow window where either a breakthrough or a breakdown is possible. Trump's latest statement lands against a backdrop of reports that Iran is edging closer to nuclear state capability, raising the stakes for any delay or miscalculation. Former intelligence analyst Larry Johnson has publicly asserted that Iran is approaching a point at which it may formally declare itself a nuclear power, a development he says could upend regional stability and global non-proliferation efforts. The same former CIA analyst further alleged that Pakistan dispatched a confidential red alert message to the United States, a discreet warning that, if accurate, would signal Islamabad's belief in an imminent and serious escalation. He added that Ishaq Dar personally delivered that urgent message to America's Secretary of State Marco Rubio in May 2026, implying direct, high-level communication between Pakistani officials and senior U.S. lawmakers. However, Pakistani authorities have denied these accounts, insisting they did not share any classified nuclear intelligence with Washington or any other party. Islamabad described the nuclear allegations as speculative, misleading, and categorically false, urging the media and policymakers to treat such reports with skepticism. Johnson also claimed that Masoud Pezeshkian had briefed Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif about Iran's nuclear status, suggesting the information circulated at very senior political levels. Veteran geopolitical commentator Pepe Escobar echoed similar concerns, warning publicly that Iran might be preparing to carry out a nuclear test to demonstrate its capabilities. Escobar went so far as to propose that Tehran could attempt to prove its nuclear capability with a controlled domestic explosion, a tactic he said would serve as a dramatic signal to the world. Johnson argued that recent shifts in U.S. rhetoric toward Iran are not coincidental but are instead connected to perceived advances in Tehran's nuclear program, prompting Washington to sharpen its public posture. He further claimed that tensions between the United States and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu intensified after the alleged intelligence reached Washington, complicating already fraught alliances. Johnson maintained that Iran deliberately used an unsecured telephone call as a signaling mechanism, a risky move he interpreted as intentional messaging rather than accidental exposure. According to Johnson, Tehran knowingly took the risk of having that call intercepted by Western intelligence agencies, suggesting the regime wanted any eavesdroppers to hear the message. Meanwhile, a reported U.S.-Israel rift has deepened after NBC revealed Pentagon concerns over suspected Israeli spying, fueling talk in Washington that some allies might be trying to peer inside Trump's Iran playbook. NBC cited current and former U.S. officials who said those concerns emerged within the U.S. government in recent weeks. The report said the Defense Intelligence Agency raised Israel's threat level assessment to critical in an internal review. Officials told NBC the assessment reflected concerns over what they described as aggressive Israeli intelligence activity. The concerns reportedly centered on efforts to learn more about President Trump's plans and strategy for the Middle East. NBC said U.S. officials believed Israel was seeking greater insight into internal policy discussions and deliberations. The internal assessment was said to include concerns about both human intelligence and technical espionage risks. Israel's embassy in Washington rejected the claims and described the allegations as completely false. Israeli embassy spokesperson said, and I quote, "Israel does not gather intelligence on American entities, let alone U.S. government officials. Israel intelligence collection efforts aimed at its enemies, not its allies. Any claims to the contrary are either misinformed or politically motivated." Unquote. The White House also pushed back against the report, saying it was based on information it considered inaccurate. The Pentagon declined to comment publicly, while the Office of the Director of National Intelligence did not address the report. NBC said U.S. officials viewed the alleged activity as extending beyond what is typically expected between allied nations. The report surfaced as Trump and Netanyahu remained at odds over how to handle the future of the Iran conflict. Trump has continued to pursue diplomatic engagement with Tehran, while Israel has favored a more hardline approach. The report followed a recent heated phone call between Trump and Netanyahu regarding Israeli strikes in Lebanon. NBC had previously reported that Trump expressed frustration with Israel's military actions during recent discussions. Trump later confirmed that he had referred to Netanyahu as crazy during the sharp exchange.